Oh my god, Drew! Now you're downgrading your desk?
Well, you know what they say about a cluttered desk. It means it's a cluttered mind. So my thought process was a small desk would mean a small...
That sounded a lot better in your head, didn't it?
Very much. Haven't done a desk tour in a couple years, actually, and it won the members poll, so that's why I'm making it today, in case you're curious. But let's just start from the beginning with the why. Why downgrade the desk in the first place? Well, for one, I had basically had the same desk for the past 4 or 5 years, and I originally bought it when I had a big old fat office space that had lots and lots of room and also was very, very expensive and involved a lot of rent money being thrown down the drain every month. And over time I realized, hey, I think people are watching these videos for usually my opinions or speculation, not so much how much room there was behind me. And because I don't want to take any of your generosity and support for granted, we thought it would be smarter to buy our own property and not be renting every month so that money goes nowhere. So that involved finding a good house and then working from home instead of having a dedicated office. And we found a great house at a very reasonable price, but it is a lot smaller than the space I used to have. So basically we still had the big desk from the big office, but in the small house. And I've learned from downgrading a lot of things that I appreciate when you have a more efficient workflow, a more efficient design. And I felt like I had a big desk, which was good for storing lots of stuff, and if there's one thing I learned about renting a huge office space, it's that you can quickly fill up any amount of space, and before you know it, you'll find yourself running out of things. So I've been trying to let go of more furniture, let go of more things, because having a more clean, minimalistic approach to interior design just makes the mind feel more free, and it allows for more walking space, and there's still stands for microphones, cameras, and lights in here, and not having to compete so much with space by a giant desk has felt very, very freeing. And on top of that, I was able to pick up this desk behind me for a very great price of precisely $0.00 because a friend of ours was moving away and they needed to get rid of a bunch of furniture, and it seemed like a decent desk. It had some light wear and tear on it, but my wife is a very talented painter and was able to paint over some of the scratches it had, making it essentially good as new. And it also had something my old desk did not, which is shelves. Shelves are kind of cool because you can actually store things in your desk but not necessarily have them on top, which to me kind of supports the thesis of out of sight, out of mind. And I was kind of sick of having my laptop for doing all my work, all of these adapters and dongles and stuff along my desk, and the iMac Pro with its keyboard and mouse. So once we realized we wanted to help out our friend by taking their old desk off them, I realized this would be a great opportunity to rethink my desk setup and try to make something smaller actually work out to be better. Kind of like what I did with my iPhone 10 recently, which is much smaller than my 13 Pro Max, but I've actually found myself enjoying it quite a bit and not combating that smartphone addiction I've been struggling with lately. So anyway, diving more into the why is the 2017 iMac Pro still a part of the desk, you may ask? Well, for one, I've never quite found the perfect external monitor that I've been looking for after all these years of using my 16-inch MacBook Pro, but Apple has come up with something really cool for the ecosystem called Universal Control, which allows me to, with one keyboard and one trackpad, which I have on my MacBook Pro, control the entire iMac Pro. So actually right now there is no mouse or keyboard connected to the iMac Pro other than the one that's attached to my MacBook Pro. So that allows it to kind of act like an external monitor, but there's also some other great perks about it. Like for one, the iMac Pro has an amazing sound system. So while I haven't been able to find the perfect external monitor for my MacBook Pro, tried the studio display and I still think it's a bit too expensive for the panel that it offers. It's essentially the same exact panel that we have on the iMac Pro. And the iMac Pro gets to act as a terrific USB charger hub, so most of the chargers and accessories I use on my desk are just directly powered off of the amazing I/O port selection that the iMac Pro offers. So the last thing that the iMac Pro can't really do that an external monitor could is let me edit my videos with Final Cut on the bigger screen, which I like doing, but everything else that I would use an external monitor for, whether it's watching YouTube, listening to music, or watching movies, or just looking at the chat while live streaming, the iMac Pro is great as kind of just the big screen TV, and thanks to Universal Control, I get to kind of pretend like it is an external monitor because I just move my mouse over and I can control it, change the volume and brightness and everything. Then I can move the mouse back to the MacBook Pro when I need to edit off that. And I can even easily share files between the two if I need to, so I can grab a file off my iMac Pro, drag it from downloads into the MacBook Pro downloads, and it works the same way AirDrop would. And I've tried AirPlaying to the iMac Pro, but there's too much latency and there's very noticeable compression, even when you try to do wired AirPlay, so I've just given up on the AirPlay approach. This allows me to retain that full crispy 5K resolution, but sadly Apple doesn't support target display mode anymore, which is why I can't directly just turn this into an external monitor. And yeah, while I don't like the chin approach of the older iMacs, I still personally think this is the best looking iMac to ever exist. Super thin on the sides, it still looks gorgeous on the desk, and it's pretty much the only space gray iMac to ever exist. So because I dropped a lot of money on it back in the day and it carried the Tailosive network all the way up until the M1 Max chip came out, it definitely holds a bit of nostalgia in my heart, and I'm glad that it still gets used on a regular basis. By the way, it was the first Mac to incorporate a 1080p webcam, and also when it gets cold, it's running an Intel Xeon processor, so it keeps the room very, very warm. And just below the iMac Pro, you probably could tell the very old-fashioned Apple USB optical drive, which allows me to put in DVDs. And you're probably wondering, what is Drew doing with DVDs these days? Well, we actually talked about it a lot more in detail recently on the Tailosive Tech podcast about how streaming services are kind of getting out of control. There's mergers and they're raising prices and they're pumping in more ads left and right. And after a while, you kind of start to get sick between all of these different movies and TV shows you got to keep track of with all these rising membership costs. So I'm actually slowly getting a bit more interested into physical media again, which I know sounds crazy if you've been watching me for a while. I used to be all about that digital media and watching things on streaming or buying them on iTunes, but we actually still have a lot of old DVDs in storage, and we realized, hey, these don't have ads on them and we can play them whenever we want. We don't have to make sure we're paying 20 bucks a month for Netflix or whatever. So I'm slowly creeping back into the physical media space, which is why the USB drive is readily accessible on the iMac Pro. Plus, like I said, iMac Pro has an amazing sound system. Like, seriously, it's on par with the original HomePod in my opinion, and it's also a lot more directional. Plus, it's got Spotify straight on it, so I can just stream Spotify right off the iMac when I need to. Original HomePod, yeah, I gotta go through the AirPlay settings on my phone and everything to get it to play Spotify. So that dock area underneath the iMac Pro is also a great place for me to keep my AirPods. Yes, there are two. AirPods Pro are usually my go-to, but on occasion when we're recording a podcast that goes on for a longer time, my AirPods Pro battery gets weak. So rather than spending the $200 on whole new AirPods with better battery lives, but over time they'll degrade and get worse, sometimes I just switch back to AirPods 2. Also, my wife uses the AirPods 2 on occasion. Yes, the original AirPods 2 I got back in 2019 with the Tailosive Tech engraving. Don't do that. It kills the resale value. But that's also where I keep my fairly pointless MagSafe puck, because both of those AirPods support inductive charging, and of course I try to use lightning as little as possible. That's part of the reason that I'm using universal control in the iMac Pro, so that there's less need for lightning. And my iPhone 10, at least right now, doesn't support MagSafe, so I could charge it on the MagSafe puck, but as you can tell, there's another wireless charger that I've brought out of storage. The Pixel stand. This one holds a special place in my heart because I got it when I was actually a part of Team Pixel, if you can believe that was a thing. But yeah, they sent me a care package all those years ago and it included a Pixel stand, and as much as I ranted on the Pixel hardware not being very good, the Pixel stand is honestly not a bad wireless charger. It's vertical, unlike all of the MagSafe chargers that Apple sells, and no, I don't want to pay the 80-90 bucks for the Belkin ones. Those are too big and too bulky compared to the thin, lightweight, and fairly compact Pixel stands, which still charge with USB-C, which I appreciate, and there's no pointless indicator light that's going on all night, so it doesn't cause too much excess light pollution, and it charges my iPhone 10 both in portrait and landscape. So would I have bought the Pixel stand if it wasn't a gift? Probably not, but because I just look at that as a little thank you from Google for all of those Pixel rants I did all those years ago, it's nice to remember those funny days where they clearly were not paying attention to the videos I was making, and also keeps my phone topped off, which I'm very grateful for. Not to mention, it's just such a clean, minimalistic approach. It seems like a wireless charger Johnny Ive would have designed. But yeah, no, I haven't found like a vertical MagSafe charger that can sit that low on the desk to where it doesn't interfere with the screen space of the iMac iMac Pro, which is also rocking a screen bar on the top made by BenQ. This was also a gift from BenQ. I don't think I would have bought it if they didn't offer it to me, but it's a nice way to keep the desk well lit at nighttime if you want to keep all the rest of the lights off. You just want some kind of lighter mood lighting, and you can change like the color temperature of it. So if you want it to be more white or more orange, you can change that. But yeah, it's just a nice little way to have kind of desk lighting without sacrificing desk space to a dedicated lamp. Now moving over, you probably all know about the 16-inch MacBook Pro, M1 Max chip, 8 terabytes of storage. I know I'm crazy. This is what's basically powering the Tailosive network right now. It's a beast. It's the only reason I can do editing live streams. I've tried to do editing live streams off my iMac Pro and it didn't work. It exports videos insanely fast. It's very capable. And yes, I still use the onboard speakers. The ones built into the MacBook Pro are amazingly good to the point that I don't even have to capture my desktop audio through some software loophole. I can actually just capture what the speakers are outputting through the onboard studio grade microphones, which sound amazing. And people can't really tell the difference between capturing desktop audio and the microphone just capturing what the speakers are saying. So I love the MacBook Pro. I'm gonna use it on all kinds of trips later this year. And that's part of the reason that I haven't actually invested in an external monitor. Some of you are probably just wondering, oh, just buy some cheap LG monitor for a low price. And trust me, I thought about it. I looked around at more external monitors, but I think I'm trying to push against this narrative that we have in our consumerist mindset that there's always problems we have that need to be solved by buying more things. And I don't know, I just bought a lot of tech in my life, and because I'm kind of drowning with all of this tech surrounding me all the time, I feel like I want to just make more use of what I have rather than insist on buying more stuff. And also, we're planning multiple trips this year where I'm going to be working for several months away from home. So even if I bought a cheap or nice external monitor, it would sit on this desk and then I wouldn't get to use it on a lot of my trips, which is why it feels like kind of an unnecessary investment. Whereas the iMac Pro, that's kind of a sunk cost, not to mention it's a full computer, 2 terabyte SSD in here with a lot of files on it. So I'm making most use of what I have, and the MacBook Pro, of course, is the more mobile workstation that I take with me on the go. And I do still have that very rare space gray Magic Mouse that came with my iMac Pro included, connected to my MacBook Pro. I know the charging method sucks. It's basically the only Apple device that I have to use a lightning cable to charge. So here's hoping that later this year they can switch the Magic Mice over to USB-C or at least Qi charging or something. But it's still the only mouse I've been able to edit comfortably with because I can easily scroll side to side and move the mouse simultaneously. I've tried MX Masters and I couldn't edit as quickly. So I still love the Magic Mouse with all of its flaws, and thankfully the battery life still lasts 2 months on a charge. So even though it's stupid and it looks dumb when you're charging it, it's not something I have to deal with too often. So yeah, I'm still living with the same Magic Mouse that I've had since 2017. And while we're coming more towards this side of the desk, I should probably comment on there's no more play button. I've just decided that subscriber counts are mostly pointless in the days of YouTube algorithms, and most people were just watching things that are recommended to them on the homepage. And with the rise of short form content, subscribers really don't mean anything anymore. And there's certain channels that get way more views than me that have way less subscribers, and vice versa. And I feel like way too much worth these days on YouTube is held into subscriber count. So I took down the play button just because I don't want people to obsess over trophies and how many people you got to click a sub button. That's why I don't ask you guys to click subscribe or anything. But the things that I do keep on my desk typically are gifts. Again, like the Pixel stand or the screen bar. And this Tesla hat here was not bought by me. I don't even know if you can get this through Tesla, but it was a gift from my good cousin Matt, who I'm very good friends with and I'm always happy to spend more time with. Even though he's an Android user, we still get along very, very well, and we like talking about Apple stuff and Tesla stuff and complaining about Elon together. But he found this in a thrift store once and just brought it by one day, and I thought it was very thoughtful of him to just be like, hey, I saw this, thought of you, thought you'd like it, so I use it in my skits from time to time. Sometimes the T represents T-Mobile, and because it was a gift and it was something that he thought of me for, I'm very grateful for it, and that's why I don't throw it out or get rid of it or anything. Simultaneously, I don't think I've ever talked about the Sting sword on the wall. That's from The Lord of the Rings. That's typically what the hobbits are using. It's of Elvish brand, and it was a gift from my father when I graduated high school. So it holds a very special place in my heart because when I was really young, he had, a sword collection that he would mount on his wall. And I was always like, Dad, when can I get a sword? And he was like, you're too young, maybe when you're older. So it was kind of one of those things that I forgot about that he brought up again once, I graduated high school, and he included this really long thoughtful note. So it reminds me of him and the great relationship we have. So that's why, even though it's not tech related, I still keep it by the desk so that I can look at it regularly, and it will glow blue if orcs or trolls or anything are nearby, which is kind of cool, keeps us safe. And while we're still on that subject of gifts, you may think I'm the crazy fanboy that would actually buy a Tesla flag like this, but once again, I did not buy it. Lots of people in my friend and family group just knew I was a big fan of Tesla, so I've often received Tesla gifts, but I've honestly not really purchased that many Tesla things other than the car itself in my life. So this was given to me by my sister way back in the attic days. If you scroll back far enough, you'll find the Tesla flag still in my old videos. So because my sister thought of me and picked this up for me, I'm very grateful for it, and that's why I'll probably never let it go. And there's more gifts that I hold on to, so that's what you'll find as we make our way more down into the shelves, which allow me to have more, you know, accessories and things available to quickly grab and access. That's one thing I really love about this desk, is it doesn't have any doors or cupboards. Those usually just eat into your, you know, chair space when you're trying to move around. But there's certain things that I don't want on top of my desk because they kind of get in the way, but things that I need to access somewhat regularly. So when we do live streams and things, we'll talk about older phones or different form factors. So I keep a lot of older tech on this bottom shelf. Like, it's always just kind of cool to, at a moment's notice, be able to whip out the original iPhone, which was a gift from my great friend Nick. I think he actually had a couple of these original iPhones. I don't know if he still has them, but it does still technically work. I just don't have a 30-pin cable accessible, but every time I plug it in and boot it up, it's cool to just kind of walk down memory lane and talk about where the iPhone started from and where it's going. I also still have the original iPad Mini 1, which is great as just a reference to the form factor, but this was never technically my iPad. I think it was my grandma's old iPad, and then she got a newer one, and she was like, I don't want this anymore, and I think you collect old tech stuff. So I was like, yeah, kinda. So when I want to reference the form factor of the iPad Mini, I can just pull this out. Also, of course, down here, we've got a lot of people's favorites. The original iPhone 4, an iPod Classic, an iPod Nano with a crappy camera. So whenever we get more nostalgic on the channel, which I feel like is more and more lately, it's nice to have a lot of that tech just readily accessible, and you can just grab it and talk about it and reference the design of it, which is a little bit cooler than trying to pull up Google Images constantly. And beneath this shelf, I have more things that don't get used as regularly. For example, my iPad Pro, because it's running stupid iPad OS. But I feel like this desk was almost like perfect for me. It's like one of those things in the universe where it all just falls in place, because sometimes universal control stops working for whatever reason. Less and less as of lately, but especially when the iMac Pro gets a software update and it has to restart. Sometimes universal control doesn't want to activate when the computer's booting up and you haven't entered the password or anything yet. So that's why I still have my Magic Keyboard with numeric keypad as a backup. I leave it turned off so that I don't accidentally set off the buttons or anything. You know, it's a decent keyboard, but I don't like that it has lightning, and personally, I'm not the kind of guy that likes having the numeric keypad, but the iMac Pro only came with this as an option. If they let me, even for the same amount of money, just have the smaller sized keyboard, I definitely would have taken that one. I love that it's space gray. I love that it's black. Like, this very cool looking keyboard. It's just a lot bigger than it needs to be, in my opinion. But my wife, when she's working on spreadsheets and stuff, she likes having the numeric keypad. And also, the reason I feel like this desk is perfect is when you combine this Magic Keyboard and my 12.9-inch iPad Pro on the second shelf, they are just barely wide enough to both sit flush. In fact, the Apple Pencil sticks out a little bit, so I grabbed the iPad Pro from back here. But for the most part, I only use my iPad when doing very specific thumbnail design or updating the outro credits, so I don't use my iPad very frequently, and that's why it's on the secondary shelf. But if we drop all the way down to the bottom, we'll find more like tech accessories that I don't need to access that regularly, but there's still things that are good to have around. Like, occasionally when I do B-roll, it's nice to have a little smartphone mount that you can prop the phone on and, you know, have your hands free so that you can show what you're talking about in the video. Like when I was talking about my 2 Apple Watches in a previous video, I used this tripod to put my phone in, and I have a Manfrotto smartphone tripod, but that's one I keep in the car for when I'm filming stuff in the Tesla. So it's just nice to have a couple of these things around. My wife will also occasionally use this if she wants to watch videos and stuff on her phone. I also have an old iPhone box that I keep a lot of dongles and adapters in. in. Haven't really used those recently, but occasionally they come up where, oh yeah, I need the CFast card reader, or occasionally I want a USB-A cable to plug into the MacBook. It doesn't happen too much, but it's one of those things that we don't want to keep in deep storage in the closet, but something that doesn't need to be readily accessible on the top of the desk. Also down there, you'll find a couple of Hot Wheels, both of which were gifts, and the die-cast Tesla Semi, which was an amazing birthday present from my good friend Mike, and the little red Tesla Model S was a gift from my father many, many, many years ago. He was joking about he would buy me a Tesla one day, and then gave me the little Hot Wheel, and we all had a good time. I think the joke was partially inspired by me, though, because one year he was really, really in the market for a motorcycle, and he wanted to buy one, so I told him that your present is waiting for you out in the garage, and I got him like socks or something, but I just left them in the garage. So it was a good gag gift, and then he kind of returned the favor. So those items are cool to have, and when I do my EV videos, I like pulling out the Tesla Semi, but for the sake of having a, useful workflow, I don't keep it up here all the time because it kind of eats into my workspace where my hands would be and stuff. But it's an amazing design that focuses on making an incredibly inefficient vehicle extremely efficient, which is why I love the Tesla Semi, even though it's not like something I plan on ever buying or anything. And I think for the most part, that kind of brings you up to date with the current desk setup. There's a coaster that kind of looks like a koala, which was a wedding gift from some of our family down in Australia. So I still use that to keep my Contigo water bottle refueled. Everybody needs to drink more water. So this ginormous water bottle is kind of my reminder of how much I should be drinking. And I appreciate you guys sticking around, figuring out what goes on in the hyper-efficient, more compact, and more space-aware desk tour of 2023. We'll see how long I can keep this going for it. Just like Marquez would say, I've been using it for the past couple weeks now, and it's been working really, really well. I like the feng shui of the room. I like the new recording angles that I've been experimenting with for the past few videos, and I hope you guys like it as well. I hope it can be kind of a good thought exercise for you to figure out how to downgrade and make better use of smaller space, because hey, in the world we're living in of inflation and recession and, bigger and bigger living spaces costing exponentially more, I think there's a lot of benefits to all of us figuring out how to live with less and how to make do with a smaller living environment, because you'll probably be able to save yourself a good amount of money by doing so, and deciding that you don't necessarily need a, 300 or 400 square foot office space, or maybe that you don't even need to have a separate office from a bedroom. Like, you can make use of trying to combine the two, and hopefully in that mindset you can figure out how to save money, maybe start working towards buying a property rather than just renting for the rest of your life, because when you buy property it appreciates over time and eventually you will own it, whereas the rental, all that money goes down the drain, you're not really investing it in anything. So that's kind of our mindset with trying to downgrade and have less space, and I'm very grateful that some of the best videos that I've ever had performance-wise, in terms of just the most amount of views, were actually videos that were recorded right here in this very room, not in my giant old office space that was way too expensive. So once again, I just want to thank everybody for supporting the channel directly, for making all of these videos possible and allowing us to not get so desperate to require more clickbait or using confirmed or official in the titles, because that's kind of what happens when you let your lifestyle or your business expenses get out of control. Your guys' generosity has allowed us to stay honest and a bit more consistent with the uploads and not have to worry about how the channel performs, and you're seriously helping out a ton just by watching these videos too. So thanks again. This is your Apple Pure. I'll see you all in the next one.